everyone. It's about 5 after, so we'll get started in just one moment. One second. Alrighty, so hi everyone. Thanks for making it out today to our workshop. So to get started, I just wanted to let everyone know, just kidding. Anyway, so welcome to our cybersecurity workshop. Today we're going to be having Chris Hadnagy as our guest speaker. I'll introduce him a little bit later on. But first, I want to make sure you all join our Discord. This is the link to do so. This is where we post all of our events, you know, the dates and times when they're coming up. And of course, there's all kinds of other discourse happening on our Discord as well, things that pertain to the tech industry, anime, gaming, all of those. So if you haven't already signed up for our Discord, please do so. And then I also believe we have some friends from WISI's joining us today. So that's our Women in Cybersecurity chapter here at FIU. So I really invite you all to connect with them as well. This is their website, this is their WhatsApp, and you can follow them on Instagram at WISI's FIU. And actually, let me go ahead and put their WhatsApp in the chat so you can do that directly. One second. There you go. So that's WISI, so definitely connect with them. And as always, you do not have to be a cybersecurity major or anything like that to participate in their events. They have some awesome workshops as well, and all FIU students are able to join. So yeah, so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker, Christopher Hadnagy. So he's the founder and CEO of Social Engineer LLC. And with that company, he's assisted other companies with keeping them secure. He's lectured and taught all around the globe. He's even been invited to speak at the Pentagon. He also is an adjunct professor at the University of Arizona currently. He's the author of the Human Hacking Guide. He's the creator of the annual Human Hacking Conference. And on top of that, he's an organizer at the Social Engineering Village at DEF CON, which is the most notable cybersecurity conference in the world. So that's just scratching the surface of all of his accomplishments, but we're really happy to have him here and speak with us today. So without further ado, I'm gonna give the floor to you, Chris.
Thanks, Lily. You make me sound cooler than I am. So.
Also, I'll stop sharing my screen so then you
okay. I'll come over here and grab this. There's a few things I want to talk about here with you folks today. First of all, as a social engineer, I'm big into human interaction. So I'm going to invite all of you to turn your cameras on if you want. I'm not going to force you, but if you want to turn your cameras on, it's always nice for human interaction. And you can feel free to ask questions at any point in time. I will organizing right now to have the chat open so you can do that. And of course, here's the way I'd like this to go. I'm going to talk to you a little about the science behind how social engineering works, what it is, how I define it, some of the reasons why I'm doing this as a career, why it would be great for you to be involved in it. I'd love to spend some time afterward answering any questions you have about the topic or about this as a career at all. And of course, I'd love to do this when I can see people, since I am big into human interaction. So feel free to unmute also and talk if you want, if you have questions on that nature. So let me just, Lily did such a wonderful job talking about, my past and some of the things that I've done. And I don't really want to go through any of that too much, but I do want to talk a little bit about what drove me to the area that I'm in right now with trying to understand social engineering. When I started doing this way back like 13 years ago or so, I would be able to make phone calls to get passwords during what we call a pen test or adversarial simulation. Or I'd walk up to a security guard and get into a building and it would just work. And I didn't know why it worked. And for anyone who has the hacker mentality, you understand that that's a little irritating. You want to know why things work and how they work. So I started to read all these books on psychology, trying to understand how the mind makes decisions, how people make decisions, and then move forward on a certain path. And the more I read about influence, persuasion, manipulation, rapport building, elicitation, the more I began to see that there was all these skills out there that were being used by people all over the globe that really could be defined as social engineering. That can help us to understand how people make these decisions and then what they and then what a security person can do with those decisions. So I started on my quest to really understand this. But before I get there, I want to just make a really bold statement to you, and that is that in my engagements, I feel like I can get 75% of you to fall for a social engineering scam. Now, you may be sitting there saying, come on, I do this. I'm in class for it. I'm in college for it. I know what these things look like. I know how to catch them. I'm not that dumb. Well, before you jump to that conclusion, let me just tell you why I feel this way. Is in my career, for the years that I've been in this, I've sent 19 million phishing emails. And I wrote a book on the psychology of phishing. And in all of that time, I've been able to have at least a 75% success ratio in getting people to click on phishing emails. And before we jump to the conclusion that this must mean that everybody is stupid, let me tell you why I can scientifically show you why these things can work. When I started to understand, though, about going back to that original story of how some of these principles of influence and psychology actually play into scams and cons and social engineering, it really developed in me the idea that we needed to define social engineering a little bit better. And at the time, if you looked it up, now going back 12, 13 years, if you went to the internet at that point and you said, what is social engineering? You found videos on how to pick up girls and how to get free burgers from McDonald's. That was it. There wasn't too much on it. It was kind of really weak, and it wasn't great for security or for a business. So the more I read, the more I began to understand that there's positive and negative sides to this. So I defined it as any act that influences a person to take an action that may or may not be in their best interest. And I use this broad definition because of just what I said. I think there's a lot of positive sides to influence and decision making that also play the same factors into the negative side. The difference is intent. Right? I'll give you an example. Here's my daughter. Now, she's much older now, but this is her when she was really tiny and cute. And you know, maybe some of you have a little sister or a little brother, so you may understand the story, or a niece or a nephew, and you may get this and you may understand then what I'm talking about. But there may have been a time in my life where she came to me and asked for a princess tea party. Now, I can tell you this, honestly, if after this session here, any of you come up to me and ask for a princess tea party, the answer is going to be a strict no. Not going to do it. We're not going to have a tea party and paint each other's nails and all of that stuff. But when she asked me, I said yes. Now, it's easy to say, well, you love her, so of course, and she's your daughter. That's unfair. But it's not. When we look at the psychology of that decision, see, a request is made, and the brain has to decide, am I going to say yes to this or no to this? And what factors go into that yes or no? Well, factor one is yes, there's an emotional content with my daughter, so I love her. But that means that certain chemicals get released in my brain, chemicals like dopamine and oxytocin. And those chemicals make my brain compliant to an answer that I normally would say no to. But yet with her, it became easy to say yes. Now, this is not revolutionary. It's just normal science. But when we understand that that's how we say yes to things that may be good or bad for us, that's how we begin to understand how social engineering can work either for or against us, and a lot of times against us. Now, what this did for me is this started in me like I wanted to have a quest to understand the sciences behind this decision making, to see how it applies to social engineering and how people like you or I can use this as part of a career or use this just to help protect, that we can use this in any way possible. So I started with many researchers that I started to work with, but I want to first just talk about three people that I had the chance to work with over my career that will help with just these sciences, because I can go on for hours, but I definitely want to get to chatting with you about the career here. So here's the first. Actually, let me back up a second. Before we even talked about the studies, I want to define the factors, because I'm not sure how many of you here are familiar with the areas of social engineering. So if you are, then please excuse the simplistic definitions. But if you're not, then let me help at least by understanding what social engineering is made up of. So these four vectors: vishing, phishing, smishing, and impersonation, as what makes up social engineering. Phishing, we all heard of it, right? It's email-based attacks. Phishing is voice phishing, which we have more of it now than ever before in history thanks to COVID. Smishing is SMS-based phishing, and then impersonation, which used to only encompass in-person, like people coming to your door or coming to your place of work, but now we're seeing heavy impersonation on LinkedIn. I just had an employee who somebody started an OnlyFans page for her, not for her, with her pictures, going to her Instagram, taking her pictures of her at a beach, and then starting an OnlyFans page with her information on it. So we're seeing a lot of impersonation attacks that are very personal in nature happening. Now, when people fall for these type of attacks, for me, it becomes important to understand why this can happen, how it can happen. So we don't fall into the trap of just saying, well, they're just stupid, that's why. Because as I'll discuss in a little bit, I really don't feel that that's the answer. Okay, so here's the first of the 3 studies I want to talk about. I had this wonderful privilege of working with a man named Dr. Paul Ekman. Now, if you don't know who he is, but if you're in any psychology class here in university, you probably have read something by him. He is one of Time Magazine's most renowned psychologists ever in history. He developed the science behind micro-expressions, micro-facial expressions. He actually was, the TV show Lie to Me was based on him and his work, and he was the scientific editor for that. Him and I had a chance to write a book together about nonverbals and how nonverbals work from the idea of a social engineer or a scam artist. Now, in working with him, he got to teach me quite a few things. One of the things, first of all, was what is a microfacial expression? So it's a 1/25th of a second muscular response to external stimuli. So what does that mean? You see something that makes you afraid, and it will trigger a fear response in your brain, and that triggers an electrical response to your facial muscles, and they will always move the same way. So for fear, it's your eyes open wide, your mouth opens, and you breathe in like that. And that happens universally. It doesn't matter what race you are, what gender you are, what age you are, where you're from, what religion you are. We all do the same thing. Now, what makes you afraid may not make me afraid, so we may have different fear responses, but fear is expressed the same way. I found that to be fascinating. In addition, what he taught me was that if we make the facial expression, not only do we create the emotion in ourselves, but we can create the emotion in people who view us, mainly because of this beautiful amount of neurons in our brain called mirror neurons. Mirror neurons were actually designed to be in our brain so that way we can communicate non-verbally. And think about this, when you have a little baby, before they understand language, you can still tell them if something's good through a smile or if something's bad through a frown. These things like our facial expressions or tone of voice become very important for communication, safety, and living. So he did the pioneering on this research, and for me, in understanding how this works, it became very evident and clear that facial expressions, creating an emotion in people, allow us to manipulate or influence what they may be feeling. Now, you'll understand why that's so important when I get to my third study that I want to talk about. But here's the second one. I got a chance to interview a man named Dr. Paul Zak. He wrote a book called The Moral Molecule. If you haven't read it, it's fascinating. It's a wonderful book. It's all about this chemical in our brain called oxytocin. And what oxytocin does is it's linked to trust and rapport. Oxytocin is very heavily released in the bloodstream when a mother is breastfeeding a baby, or when two people are intimately connected, or when you see your best friend, whether it's in person or on social media. Our brains release oxytocin, and it's linked to trust and rapport. We see that object that makes us feel trust and rapport, and oxytocin is released in our blood. Now, here's what's amazing by Dr. Zak's research, is that he says oxytocin is released more and it's stronger when you feel trusted, not when you feel trust. So think of that. If I said to you guys and gals here, I'm going to tell you something I haven't told the world yet. And now the kicker is you have to believe it. So you believe me, and then I give you a secret. I tell you something that's not released, it's not public. Your brain goes, wow, he trusted me with something really personal. That's secret. And your brain releases oxytocin. And I'm your dealer, right? I'm your dealer in that. So now later on, you're sitting in your dorm or your home and you're scrolling through LinkedIn and you get to my account and you see my picture and you connect with me. And your brain releases oxytocin again because it says, oh, that's the guy who trusted me. I liked that guy. And he also liked me. And we have that connection. Now, for millennium, con men and scam artists have been using this without knowing the science by getting you to trust them, by getting you to believe that they trust you. And then when that relationship is sealed, they can do almost anything. Okay, now, our third and final study area was done by a man named Dr. Daniel Goleman. He wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence. Again, another wonderful book. And in his book, he coined a phrase called amygdala hijacking. Now, the amygdala, there's two of them in our brain. It is not green. Everything in our brain is gray or gray or brown or different colors, not like that. But they are tiny little walnut-sized shaped piece of gray matter that sits right above the hippocampus in our brain as part of our limbic system. And the amygdala's job is to process emotions from external stimuli. Excuse me. Now, why is this important to understand? Well, because the amygdala actually does this before the brain has a chance to kick in. Now, let me give you an example to help solidify this. Imagine you're walking through your yard. You're walking home from the day at university, and you're deathly afraid of snakes. You know this. Your brain knows this. So there's a script in your brain that already says, hey, Chris, you're afraid of snakes. Now, you're walking home, and out of the corner of your eye, you see what you perceive to think is a snake. What happens? Well, your eyes open wide, you pull your hands back, you may gasp, right? And you reel away from the thing that creates fear. Well, what occurred? The amygdala creates physiological and psychological reaction for a reason. So in that moment, you have the 3 Fs: freeze, which is your first one, but then you have the fight or flight. So by opening your eyes wide, your brain is taking in all of the surroundings and gathering as much light as it can to prepare for one of the other two. By breathing in, you're oxygenating your blood, preparing for either running or fighting. And by freezing and tensing your muscles, you're actually releasing adrenaline into your bloodstream, which will allow you, imagine if you were relaxed during this, you may not be able to fight or flight. Now, a second later, you look down and you see it's just a garden hose. And you go, ah, silly, that was it. And you calm down and you go about your day. Or if you look down and it's a big old snake coming at you, now you decide, do I fight or do I flight? Which one of those two is going to happen? But your amygdala prepared your brain and your body for that initial response. Now, why is this important for us to understand in security? Because in Dr. Goleman's research, what he did is he triggered strong emotional responses in his research subjects. And as you can see here, in each response, the amygdala is down in this area here. And in each response, what you can see is in these emotions, the amygdala is lit up, whereas the frontal cortex, where you see logic and critical thinking, is not. You don't see these areas very well lit, but you see them all down here. Now, what does that mean? That means if you're triggering a strong emotion in someone, that the very next decision they make may be solely based on emotion and not logic, which is if you think back to any bad decision that you have made, and afterwards you went, oh, why did I do that? It probably was linked to some strong emotional response, right? How many times have you sat there at your desk and someone sends you an email that just pisses you off and you type out your response and you hit send, and then a minute later you go, oh my God, did I literally just say that? Did I literally just say those words? And you want to reach into the internet and pull it back, but you can't, right? That's amygdala hijacking. Now, if you do that, if your target gets hijacked, they may then not realize that the next decision they make is going to be solely on emotion. Now, I want to tie this all together for you through a case study. So we had what we call an adversarial simulation. In the market, they're called penetration tests, but I really don't like that name. it resonates in a very sexist way. So I like to use adversarial simulation. I feel it fits more. So for the purpose of this speech, that's what I'll be using in place of the word penetration test. In this particular case, we had a company that gave us 1,000 people that we were supposed to test. And we started doing OSINT, which stands for Open Source Intelligence, excuse me. And when we started doing OSINT, we found that this company, their employees were Mac advocates. They loved everything to do with Mac. Now, they had to use Windows at work, but they truly loved their Apple products. Even a Facebook group where all these employees talked about the newest iPhone coming out. So we came up with a 3-part plan. And the first part was we sent a phishing email to the whole company. And we said to all 1,000 people that we have brand new iPhones and we're going to raffle them off. Now we bought a domain that was, misspelled for their name. Let's just say it was company.com. And we started something like updates-company.com. We sent the email out all at the same time to all 1,000 people and said, if you go to this web page, you could enter for the raffle for one of the 10 iPhones that we have. And all they needed to do was fill out their full name, their employee ID, their password to their domain credentials, and submit it, and they'd be entered in the raffle. Out of 1,000 people, can you guess how many actually did it? Well, if you guessed 75%, you'd be right. 750 people gave me their domain credentials. So now I'm sitting there going, whoa, like that's not what I expected. What am I going to do with all these names? So our next vector was to start calling, doing some phishing. So we started calling these people, and we were going to try to use the domain, the passwords and credentials we had to gain access to some of their systems. But we weren't getting anywhere, and I couldn't figure out why. So finally, I got on the phone with one young man, and he says to me, hey, I said I was using that I was Paul from IT. That was my pretext. And he said, Paul, listen, I just got your email from tech support, and I already changed my password. Thanks for telling me it was a phish, but I'm good. Now I knew what was happening. That was IT doing a great job. They heard about a phish. They sent an email out to the whole company blasting them saying, hey, go change your password if you clicked on this email. And then right away, they got the people went and changed their password. So I thought, man, what are we going to do? Like, we're not going to be able to use these. So I said, let me see if I can figure out another method. So I picked the 25 most highest ranking people on that list of 750. And I came up with a pretext to call each one of them, tell them I was Paul from IT, and that I'm really happy they changed their password, but there was a virus on their machine now for clicking that. And we created a very special virus cleaner that was just for the company. And if they install it, it will clean their machine from all viruses. Now, of course, it wasn't a virus cleaner. I created what's called the Meterpreter reverse shell. So there's a program called Metasploit people use for hacking computers. And it has a shell program which allows us to create a connection between two computers over the internet. And I uploaded it to the very same site, the up-company.com, and had them go there. Now, what I'm going to do now is play one of these calls for you. When you're listening to the call, I want you to think, would you fall for that? But I don't want you to tell me. I just want you to honestly think about it and see if you would fall for it, okay? Lily, if you don't hear the sound in a minute, just tell me, okay? Let's see.
Did your password change?
Yes, I did.
Okay, excellent. Just wanted to tell you that was really good. That's the way it should have been handled.
Okay, yeah. As soon as we realized it, 2 of us jumped right on it.
Okay, so there was another guy in your team that also?
Yeah, I think it was JR.
JR, okay. I'm just going to write down. I'll be talking to him later on. So just to follow up, what we're doing is, are you on the VPN right now? You're on your work machine?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to give you an internal address. It's an FTP site that we set up for the employees. You can go there. You can see there's one file there that you'll be able to download, and it will just clean up any residual mess from that website.
Okay.
So if you're at your machine, just open up a browser, and I'll give you the address. Type in FTP.
FTP?
Yep, F as in Frank, T as in Tom, and then P as in Paul, and then a colon, and then 2 slashes, and these are the slashes that are by your question mark, the same button as your question mark.
Gotcha, STP, okay.
and then the word is update dash, and the dash is like the minus sign.
Gotcha.
.com.
Okay.
And when you go there, it should open up. It should say index of, and it should have one file. There's a file called PC Checker.
Okay, you know it's here. Okay, click on that.
Yeah, click on that.
Okay.
And it should download.
Okay.
Or it should ask you if you want to run or save. Yeah, click run.
Okay.
And if everything goes good, you should get no alerts. You know, if you have a residual problem from that site, then you'll get a message. But if nothing happens and everything's clean and good and we're done.
Okay, I just got a second thing. It said the publisher could not be verified. Are you sure you want to run this software?
Yeah, click OK.
Run again? Okay. Okay, now it took me back to the original screen.
Okay, that's good. So if you got no error message, then you're good to go. So you're clean.
Okay, well, thanks for the help.
Not a problem. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah, no, basically, right? He clicked. So out of 25 calls, only one person stopped me using this very same method. Now, when that happens, sometimes in this industry, I've heard people use this phrase, that there's no patch for human stupidity. Let me tell you why I really don't like this phrase. If we really believe that in this industry, what we say is that anyone who falls for this must be stupid. And I don't believe that's true. In this particular company, the people I were working with were all engineers. They were smart people. They were developing new processes for things. These weren't morons. These were people that fell for a social engineering attack by a skilled attacker. And let me also tell you, right, Karen, thank you for admitting that, and I agree. And let me tell you why I really feel this way, but I have to first just remind you about something, which is that in my career, I've sent 19,000, I should have updated that, phishing emails. And I wrote a book on the psychology of phishing. But I've fallen for a fish. And the reason is I'm an Amazon junkie, right? I really am. I'm like one of those guys, like if Amazon was a drug, I'd smoke it. You know, it's like, no, that's a terrible reference. Okay, I'm sorry. Lillian, delete that. But anyhow, there's probably a train of Amazon trucks outside my house, like with a conveyor belt, just moving boxes to my front door. Like I live on Amazon, and COVID just ruined that, right? It's ridiculous. And I'm preparing for DEF CON, this conference out in Vegas. This was a couple years ago, and my office is a wreck, and I'm trying to get to the airport, and I run this competition for little kids out there, and I ordered like 50 things from Amazon to go directly to the hotel. Now, I'm sitting in front of my email, packing up, trying to get my desk ready, and I get an email that says, one of your recent Amazon orders will not be shipped due to a declined credit card. Now, 19 million phishing emails. Here's what I tell every stinking client I have. Don't ever click those links. You open up your browser, you type in smile.amazon.com, and you go to the page, you log in, and you check your orders. But what did I do? I clicked on that link. Now it opens up what looks like a real Amazon login page. Now this is the only thing that saved me, is I use a password manager. And that password manager has my username saved, but never my password in the box. So I go click on the password box to put my password in there, and I notice that my username is not saved. And I go, well, that's odd. And I look up at the URL bar and I see something.ru. I'm like, the Russians, they got me. And, you know, I decide, like, I'm going to do what every intelligent security person does. I burn my house down. I move my family to an undisclosed location. And I never tell another human soul. That's what I wanted to do. But I come back and I tell my COO, Ryan, I just did this really bad thing. And he's like, that's epic. You need to tell everybody. And I'm like, I'm not telling anybody. He's like, if you, the guy who wrote the book on phishing, can fall for it, everyone needs to know that it's okay. And I'm like, dang, I hate logic, you know, because I was definitely hijacked at that moment. And he's right. If I don't feel that I'm particularly stupid, I'm not the smartest guy on the planet, but I would not say that there's no patch for human stupidity. I fell for this for a couple of reasons. One is it was the right emotional trigger for me. Now, maybe one of you here, you hate Amazon. So, you know, that wouldn't fall for you. It was the right time for me. I was stressed. I was trying to rush to get to the airport, and I clicked on the link. And it was the right theme. The fact that it was a missing package or something that's not going to happen that I needed the stress made me stop critical thinking, not follow my security procedures, and click on that link. Now, fortunately for me, I didn't get hacked, but how many people don't have that other stop? So what can you do? Okay, here's a few things, 4 safety tips, and then we'll talk about the industry. First, use the science. Here's what Dr. Goldman found when he did his research into amygdala hijacking. He found that by giving his research subjects even something as small as 25 to 35 seconds of space in between the emotional trigger and critical thinking, their brains were able to return back to a critical thinking infrastructure. So, you know, I used to tell people, if you get an emotional email, just get up and walk away from it. And that doesn't work for me. And let me tell you why. Is while I'm walking, I'm stewing about the email. And I'm thinking about how I'm going to tell that person off when I get back. So I'm not calming down. So let me tell you how I solve this. I write my email out, but I commit to a promise to myself to not click send. Now, once my email's written, my emotions are out. I get up and I go for a walk. I come back 5 minutes later with a new glass of water. I sit down and I read the email to myself. And when I do that, I go, oh my God, thank God I didn't click send on that. I need to change 18 paragraphs, you know, and I just start deleting stuff. And that has saved me from that version of amygdala hijack. So what can you do? Well, if you get an email or a phone call that makes you emotional, before you make a decision, it's okay to just tell yourself, it's okay to wait. It's okay to take that break. Perfectly fine. Second is you need to educate the weakness and reward the positive. As an industry, if this is the industry you're going to end up in, you need to focus on the education portion and not blaming the victims, not blaming the people who fall for this, not being the typical IT guy or gal that says, yeah, well, you fell for this because you're dumb. We need to get out of that mentality. This industry needs more caring, compassionate people. Actually, one of the things that I like to always talk about, and I'll get into this when we get into the next section about the industry, is this is why I feel we need more women in this industry, because women naturally are better at being more compassionate and empathetic. And we need education that is not so much about be tough, suck it up, do this. Compassion and empathy are what's going to make a change in this, because human-based attacks are the next biggest thing. And it's what we need. And telling people that they suck is not going to make a change. Any of you here that are parents or will be parents in the future, you'll understand this when you become a parent. It would never work if you wanted to discipline your child by embarrassing them in front of all of their friends. So if your kid does something bad and you pull them out in front of their group of friends and say, look how dumb you are, they're not getting compliance. You're not going to get compliance from your child, so don't do it to your employees. Don't humiliate them in front of the company, because you're not going to get compliance. John Doe. I don't know who you are, but I feel like you should be in a morgue somewhere. But anyhow, women are mentally developed to feel more emotional than men, whereas men feel action first and then think after. So yeah, I know the name. There is some science behind the difference between men and women's brains, but there's also some societal factors in there, you know, and some of them, although biased, are a strength for women. So for many, many years, women and people of diversity have not been treated great in this country or the world, but let's just talk about this country. So they have not been treated great or given equal measure. So over the years, women and people of color have been taught to be more mild and submissive. Now, we can look at that as weakness, but I look at that as strength, not the way we got there. Not the way we got there. The way we got there is horrific, but the strength that those people have now, because that mild submissiveness ties directly into one of the most powerful principles of influence, which is ego suspension. And people who can naturally suspend their ego are so unbelievably powerful in this industry. It's mind-blowing. My company is made up of 72% women, and they dominate in every task that I give them. It doesn't matter what it is, they dominate it. And I see a lot of that in there. It doesn't mean my guys are bad, they're great. But if we were going head to head in a competition, my women who have been in the company for a year will beat me, and I've been doing this for 16 years. It is just hands down. skill sometimes doesn't matter. There's also a psychological principle of when women speak to either a male or female. See, when a male asks for help, so if I were to call you on the phone as Paul from tech support and say, hey, Armando, I need your help, and you hear my voice, your brain starts to go, should I help? But if Lily were to call you and say, hey, Armando, I need your help, your brain goes, how can I help? We're all psychologically wired to have that knight in shining armor when we hear a woman in distress, whether you're male or female. And that, believe me, I am so happy that the bad guys are just now catching on to use more women because they've been mostly male dominated. And if we can change this industry, we can get ahead of the curve, right? So, okay, I know I went off on that a little bit, but I'm pretty passionate about that. Third, because I'm human-based in my company doesn't mean I don't think about technology. You need to use things like second-factor authentication, password managers, VPNs. These things are important. They're not the fix for all problems in technology, but without them, you're the low-hanging fruit. So use them, right? I mean, we're still in 2021, we're still seeing that password or a variation of it is one of the strongest passwords. One of the most used passwords. How the heck is that possible? Like, how have we not progressed past that? It just honestly blows my mind. Yes, and Mr. Doe, frequent updates of patching is essential. I cannot tell you how many times I'm working with a client and I'm like, you are on Windows 7 still, or you haven't updated your OS X in like 2 years. Yeah, they're like, I don't want to do it. Well, then prepare to be breached, right? Because this is why updates happen, why they're there, is because they find a vulnerability and they patch it. And then last but not least, if you see something, say something. If you work for a company or at your university, and I'm talking about all aspects of security, reporting is the way to go. You may be great at catching fish. Maybe you see the emails and bam, you're just one of those people, you know exactly what a fish looks like. But the guy or gal sitting next to you, they haven't been trained. They're not familiar with phishing. If you don't report it right away, then maybe that person will click and fall for it. So you want to get into the habit of reporting things, helping people realize that there's attacks out there, and that can save you, your company, your family. We do this in the family. If I see an email going around or an SMS attack, I'll tell. We have a group family chat. I'll put it in the family chat. Hey guys, there's an email going around right now, or there's a text going around. If you get this, don't click it. And maybe my kids have already seen it or something, but I still feel that's my job. I got to keep them informed. I cannot tell you how many times that's kept our family safe, because my wife, I love her dearly, but she is my biggest security hole, right? She just, if it's a sale on makeup, she's clicking it. So if I see one of those, I'll be like, hey, don't click on this. I just saw this. And now what's happened over doing that so many times is she'll get an email that looks a little weird, and before she does anything with it, she goes, hey, Chris, can you check this out and tell me if it's real or not? And that, because of time, and she knows I'm not going to say, how dumb are you? Why would you even think of clicking on that? She knows I'm going to look at it and say, oh, yeah, that's safe. You can go ahead. Or, hey, that's bad. Thanks for reporting that. Let's tell the kids. And that change and the way we communicate with our family, friends, coworkers, businesses can make a huge difference in staying ahead of the curve in this problem. Okay, so questions, talk about careers, talk about the industry, talk about whatever you want. I am here for the next, I think, 45 minutes to answer whatever it is that you want. And Armando, thank you for coming on camera. You're now my favorite. Hey, Noah.
I'll get the ball rolling here since I have a lot of questions for you, but I'll keep it to a minimum. I also see that you were on the offensive security side doing OSCP and stuff of offensive security nature. Maybe you can expand on that for somebody who wants to get into that type of industry.
Sure.
I'll be a little bit more specific, especially degrees versus certifications. What would you recommend? What route did you take? That whole. Yeah.
You're asking me a tricky question because I'm speaking at a university. So, okay, my whole career in this field started as the operations manager for offensive security. So the company, if you know, that's where I took the OSCP. I was the this is a little braggy, but I'll tell you since you asked. I was the first person to crack the machine called FC4 that was supposed to be uncrackable. Maddie offered me a job on the spot, and for a few years I was their ops manager. As far as pen testing or adversarial simulation goes, from a non-SE perspective, a non-social engineering perspective, you cannot get a better course than something from OffSec. They are hands down the best adversarial simulation networking course that you'll find. And the reason is it's practical. There's a lab. You go and you hack actual computers. So it's not a Q&A. You're not just coming and learning by reading a book and memorizing some answers. You have to prove that you can actually hack things to pass their cert. Now, with that said, if we were having this discussion 5 or 6 years ago, my answer would be blanket, forget about college, all you need is certifications. Now there's a difference, and I'm going to tell you why. For a couple reasons. First difference is there's more need in this market, and you folks, you young folks here, can't do what I did to get into the field. So I got kicked out of college after 2 months for writing a war dialer and shutting down Sarasota County's phone system for a day. Not my gleaming moment. It was a mistake. And there was no laws on it at the time. So I got kicked out of college because the cops came and they said, hey, who did this? And I went, oh, that was me. And they went, hey, don't do that again. That kind of sucked. Like, businesses are really upset. And the dean said, yeah, you embarrassed us. Get out. And that ignited in me a passion to want to learn, because all I did at that moment, it was like one of the very first war dialers ever written, as I used Lotus 123, which is the original Excel. And I daisy chained using LPT1 cables, youngins. If you don't know what that is, you can look that up on the Google. But LPT1 cables, the really wide serial cables from a printer. I daisy chained two 2400 baud modems together, and I figured out how to write a script that would do multi-threaded. Thank you, Noah, for the cable. Multi-threaded scripting, and because I was a phone freaker, you know, back in Captain Crunch days, there was these whistles in the Captain Crunch box that had 26 megahertz. So you can take the Captain Crunch whistle to a payphone and you whistle in it, and it gave you free calls because it was the same megahertz tone as a quarter getting dropped. So we would always have, I would never pay for a phone call. We didn't have cell phones back in the day, kids. So to make a call, you had to pull over and use a payphone. And the Captain Crunch whistle let us make free calls. So we were very much into figuring out tones. I figured out with a computer, you can actually play a certain tone that told the phone number to just shut itself off for a couple minutes. And I threaded that and created this war dialer that basically dialed about 16 numbers at once, played a tone to tell them to shut off, disconnected, and called 16 more numbers. But since I had two modems, I was calling 32 phone numbers every 2 seconds and shutting them off, and I ran it for about an hour. So after the phone system in Sarasota County went dark, I went, oh, that must have been me. And then I disconnected it and went, I didn't mean to do that. I'll just go home. And then the next day, anyhow, that started my desire to want to understand how technology, computers, modems, internet, everything worked. And that, you know, you can't do that today. You do that now, one of you youngins here, you're going to be going to prison because there's all these laws against it. That's considered terrorism now. Zachary, that's a great question. What was I trying to accomplish? Because I was a phone freaker, which is what we were called, is understanding what tones did what to a phone. I thought that I would shut off a couple phone lines. They would come back in 2 or 3 minutes. And it would just be an interesting experiment to see how a attack could be performed against a company, because at the time we weren't talking about internet-based attacks, against the company's phone system, which is how we did wire transfers. It's how we did faxes. It's how we communicated. Everything was from phone. So I was kind of thinking of what would have been considered a very early on pen test in order to show if this would be something that could be viable as an attack vector. What I didn't mean to do was take about 60,000 phone numbers down in a little bit of time. I was stupid and young, so I didn't obviously critically think through the hour-long process of what I was doing. Anyhow, you do that today, you're going to prison, and then you won't have a career, right? Yeah, I proved the point, and I'm actually, for me, okay with the way it turned out. I'm pretty happy with where I'm at right now. So I would say, like, maybe if I stayed in there, I might have just become a Lotus 123 developer or something. But anyhow, so today I do believe there needs to be a blend of some university training with certifications. Now, here's my reason for that. University training tells me that you have commitment to sticking to a program. It tells me that you probably have written reports, which is essential in my field. What it doesn't tell me, though, is if you have practical application, and that's where certifications come in. So Lily mentioned I'm an adjunct professor at University of Arizona. I've been asked multiple times to be a professor at universities, and I've always turned it down because every time I ask, can I do something practical, I get told no, like the board won't allow it. U of A said yes. So my class for social engineering, there is a practical SE experiment for a semester. And it ends with a live pen test of a real company. So my students actually do a social engineering adversarial simulation test on a live company that has agreed to work with the university. So now when they graduate, they've actually done the work and written a report on it. That, to me, as an employer, is so valuable. You come to me with just degree knowledge, you're great. You're great, right? I'm gonna be interested, and that's awesome. But you're gonna start definitely at the lower levels, right? Because you need to learn the industry. But you come with practical experience, there's a difference now in that kind of person. So Noah, I know it's a really long answer to your question, but I don't think it's simple because I have people in my company that have no degrees. They've never been to college and they are leading the industry. And then I have people that have tons of degrees. One of the highest women in our company, Maxie, she has a degree in quantum computing. How often does she use it? Never. But she has a degree. But it doesn't matter what it's in, right? Nobody in my company has a degree in InfoSec. Anyone who has a degree is in something else. Art, theater, sign language, they have, educations and all of these things, but none of them have it in InfoSec. So certifications, the OSCP for adversarial simulation, hands down the best. This is self-promotional, but my certification for social engineering is the only practical social engineering certification on earth, and that's called the SEPP, the Social Engineering Pen Test Professional. That's on the social-engineer.com site. Then there are other certifications which aren't bad, like, Security Plus is good for just basic security knowledge. If you have any knowledge of Python scripting, that's really useful in this industry. Those kinds of things are good. Experience to me is the best. Like, I'll give you an example. I have my OSCP and my OSWP, or WP. I got my OSCP 9 years ago, 11 years ago, 12 years ago, somewhere around there. If you sat me in front of the most current OSCP now, I probably wouldn't pass. So I have it, I got the little plaque up there. It sits on my wall because I love it. I'm proud of it. One of my proudest certs I own. But it's only good if I keep up with it, right? And now I focus solely on social engineering, so I don't focus on the network side. Do you think websites, labs like Rangeforce and INE are good ways of demonstrating practical knowledge to employers? Heck yes. So Andres, am I probably saying that wrong? Andre? Sorry, I'm terrible with your name. If you want to correct me, though, I'll take it. To me, CTFs or lab environments are a great way to display skill. Right, because many employers, many that are hiring you for network adversarial simulation, will sometimes put you through a lab environment to prove that you have the skill that you're saying you do on paper. So yeah, I think CTFs and things like that are great. Getting together with your classmates and, hacking one of those VMs that they have online that allow you to do that. They have all these VMs that you can download to hack. Those things are great. And if you join a CTF and get a cert from it or something, or get like a certificate plaque or something saying you did it and you ranked third, those things are useful. Those people, when they come to me, I'm like, okay, you do this. Wow, look at how many CTFs you've been a part of. Man, you've done like one every 6 months for the last 3 years. Like, you're interested. This is not something you did 10 years ago. You're doing this now. Those things do make you attractive to employers in this field, because it shows that it's more than just a job you're looking for. This is some of your passion. And this is different. Like, think of this almost like being a doctor. Like, you don't want your doctor to be the kind of guy who at 5 p.m. he goes home and doesn't think about medicine. Right? You want your doctor to be the guy who gets the medical journals and he's reading all the new studies. He's the guy who's keeping up on new meds, right? In this field, you can't be the guy or gal who says, 5 p.m., I'm not a security person anymore. This becomes part of your life and your passion. It's what I read about. It's what, I'm sitting here in my, this is my reading for this week, right? I'm reading The Emotional Brain from Joseph Ledoux. It's all about the limbic system and how neuroscience works. I'm reading David and Goliath from Malcolm Gladwell, which is just a phenomenal book. And I may start this one, but I'm probably not gonna. Synaptic Self, which is another Joseph Ledoux book, but it's all about how neurons and synapses work for our brain. And then in addition, I'm also in Talking to Strangers from Malcolm Gladwell. So feeding your brain, that part of this industry is you have to constantly be reading new things and learning new things, or you'll atrophy. It's just like working out, and this field takes a lot of time to do it. So if you're going to commit to that, great. And if you don't want that, there are places for you in this. Like, you can be a, like a firewall administrator or something, where you just run some rules throughout the day. You don't need to have this level, but like in social engineering, man, you gotta be doing this. It's almost like 24/7.
Chris, I want to piggyback off of what you started saying about CTFs, about hands-on labs, and all that. For those of us who are interested in cybersecurity career, the offensive side or the defensive side, the more practical side, you as an employer, if you see something on a resume, how can you quantify? If somebody writes, okay, I do CTFs, I do all these great, hands-on, hack the box, hack the site, over the wire, all these great, resources, but how is it quantifiable to an employer versus you see a bachelor is in computer science, a master's in maybe cybersecurity, or maybe a computer science with a focus on cybersecurity? How do you as an employer quantify those great extracurricular activities?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, if someone just says that they do it, you have to either take them at face value or not. But what I like is when someone comes and they took part in competitive CTFs, because those are generally provable, like took third place or took second place or took first place. I know some people who like every year compete in the DEF CON CTF. If you compete in the DEF CON CTF, you are mind-blowing to me, because you have to qualify just to compete in the CTF, and the qualification is hard enough for most people. Now, if you compete and you rank anywhere in the top 5, you don't need a certificate. You've just proven you can do the job, right? So look for, once you play with Hack in the Box and others, look for CTFs, because there's dozens of them. What's the website? Hang on. Let me find it. Actually, let me ask Max, see if she's on.
Chris, I just want to say it's an honor to have you here, truly, because I've listened to your podcast. I just want to say I'm a huge fan. I love all the stories you tell, and I love reading, listening to you talk about and seeing videos about the SE Village and DEF CON. It's really amazing, everything that you do. Huge fan.
I appreciate that. I really do. Thank you for that. I don't know your name, but it's question mark.
Yeah. Quickly, I think we glossed over a question from Emmanuel. So he asked, before you entered the industry, what practices or skills did you focus on at first?
Beautiful. Thank you for catching that, Lillian. Hang on. Here it is. I'm going to put this in the chat for all of you. Then I'm going to get to that question. Okay, here you are. Everybody, let's see, everyone in meeting. This is a list of CTFs that are happening around the globe. It actually has location, the times it takes. You can look through all of these. You can sign up for these. There's just dozens and dozens of them. So you can go and take a look. Yeah, CTF, right? It's good. Okay. The question. So, here's what's interesting. Remind me, who asked it? Emmanuel?
Yeah,
Emmanuel. Here's the interesting answer for you, which is not a great answer for this question. So I'm going to back it up a little and give you a better answer. And this is not meant as a brag. There was no industry for social engineering before I started it. I was literally the first company ever to say, let me do only social engineering all the time. So there was nobody doing it. So there was no skill sets that I said, I'm going to grow up and do this. When I was young, there was no such thing as getting paid to go break into places unless you were a criminal. I mean, I get paid to fly around the globe and break in banks. That's ridiculous to me. If you had taken 19-year-old me and said, when I was getting kicked out of college, where you're going to be when you're in your 30s and 40s, it would not be flying around the globe breaking into banks. That would not be my job, my career of choice. But that's what I do, right? So I don't know if I could tell you, like, my skill set was, and this is not the path you should take. I got bored really fast at work, so I would switch jobs all the time, and then I would do crazy dumb things. Like, I said one day, I want to be a chef. So I went and I walked into a restaurant and convinced them to hire me. That's what I did. I became an international negotiator for stainless steel, traveling to China and India. I'm written up in a Chinese magazine as the only American to ever negotiate a steel deal directly with this mill in China for a small American company. And then I would get bored. I'd be like, okay, I did the thing. Now I'm going to move on. And I would quit. And my wife says I'm like the Pretender, that old TV show, but without the genius. So, I would be like, I'd go and do these things and then just move on. And I don't suggest you do that, but that life experience for me has got me where I am. So that's not a good answer for you, Emmanuel. So let me give you a better answer of what things you can do. You do not need to have a degree in psychology, but just like what I'm doing here is I'm trying to understand how our brains work more, because for me, it's like an auto mechanic who doesn't know how an engine works. They can't help you, right? So I'm sitting here saying, the reason you make bad decisions is because psychologically you have these things happening in your brain. That's not a fix. So for me to be able to help my clients get fixed, I need to understand what parts of your brain are involved in that bad decision.
Yes.
Once I figure that out, now I can figure out how to help you fix it. So educate yourself in some psychology. The books like Cialdini's Influence, where is it? I have it here. I would show it to you. Okay, here's one. Emotions Revealed from Dr. Ekman, Paul Ekman. Amazing book on nonverbals. This one from Amy Cuddy's book on presence. This is maybe one of the best books ever written in the history of science. She is an amazing social scientist. Let's see, Daniel Goleman, I already mentioned this one, but that one on emotional intelligence, just a phenomenal book. And I know I have Influence sitting here somewhere, and I can't find it because it's probably right in front of my face, but Cialdini's Influence or Persuasion, also great books on that. And there's just I could keep going for hours on that, but books will give you an education that you need to kind of understand where you are in this field. And then the last thing I'll say that is, I think a very important point that took me way too long to learn is when you start gaining some of these skills, don't deal in absolutes.
Okay.
Right? We do this often, right? Here's what we do. We say, I start learning nonverbals, and we start to say, well, this expression means anger. So an absolute would be, I look out here in the camera and I look at Lily and she doesn't look angry, but let's say she had anger on her face and I go, she's mad at me. I said something wrong. That's an absolute and that's wrong. There's a bajillion reasons why Lily can have anger on her face, and none of them may be related to me. So just because you have the skill and the talent, don't make the assumption that we know everything about it, and that could save you from a world of heartache. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. What other ones did I miss?
I have one. May I?
Yes, please.
All right, so this is going to sound a little odd, but with the amount of honeypots that are out there now on the internet, what would your mentality be for constructing one?
Yeah, that's not terribly odd. So here's the thing, I guess. My work and life motto is leave them feeling better for having met you. So I'm not prone to start a honeypot that could affect someone not in the know. Right? So if I make it public and then some unknowing person comes and falls for it and ends up feeling duped, trapped, violated, then I haven't accomplished my main mantra and my purpose. So it depends, right? If you're creating one, the other problem I have, if you're creating one that just is going to catch really bad people, you yourself don't have the power to stop them, right? Like, so I think I have it here on my ending slide. Yeah, I started a nonprofit called the Innocent Lives Foundation. And the Innocent Lives Foundation focuses on helping law enforcement catch people who create child pornography. So people who abuse kids, film it, and then trade it on either the open or the dark web. Now, don't get it wrong. We are not a vigilante group. We're not those whacked out people on Facebook who are making believe we're 13-year-old girls and getting some guy to come to a local McDonald's and then embarrassing him. That is useless and doesn't do anything. It just educates the predators on how to be smarter. What we are doing is using our skills in this field to help law enforcement close cases they cannot close by using OSINT, by using technical tools, and helping them locate bad people that are doing bad things so they can be arrested. So if your honeypot is just going to catch a bunch of scammers, but at the end of the day, it's not going to do anything, then I feel like it's a waste of energy and time. If it's an educational tool for fellow students or yourself, okay, I could see the reason for it. But if it has a chance to hurt an innocent, I also think that it may not be the best, because you're right, there are a ton of them out there. So I don't know if that answers it, but
I'd say it's sufficient. Thank you.
thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, if you tell me what your name is.
So basically, you've seen many eras of this cybersecurity landscape, and we're currently in an era where it's just taking off. In the news, you see a break-in every other, every month, every other week. There's a new break-in in some website, a county, let's say a bank, or someone themselves is getting targeted. Where do you see this landscape in the future, and what sort of technologies should we, the youth, be focusing on now in order to protect ourselves and the nation?
Yeah, I love that question, John. Should I call you John? Boy, I can probably give a whole semester on this one. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about landscape. 2 years ago, I got asked almost this identical question, and I was saying, we're going to see phishing as the brand new attack vector everyone needs to be aware of, and everyone was like, are you really sure? Look at what's happening today. Our grandparents are being attacked through phishing. I mean, this is a real problem. So when I say this, I'm not just saying conjecture. Social engineering attacks are not going anywhere, and they're going to get more horrific, and they're going to get more real. With the advent of deepfakes now, we are going to see SE attacks take on a whole new level that is going to make it so hard, even for trained experts, to figure out that they're happening. We're past the days of, I'm a Nigerian prince with $40 million, help me, I share you. We're done with those days. We're now getting emails that come from real domains that look legitimate, that are using passwords they found in breaches. The level of sophistication in attacks today. I have a client in Orlando just this week that lost $257,000 to a crypto scam. These people have a real trading platform. It looks like a real piece of software. It shows you Bitcoin going up and down. It shows you fake people making money. And when you fall for it and you invest your crypto into this platform, they take it and they run. They have probably spent tens of thousands of dollars on a legitimate looking piece of software. So the landscape is we are going to see these attacks happen more and more. Now, when I say the next thing, before you freak out, let me caveat it and explain. Social media is by far one of the biggest problems that we have in society today. Now, I say that, and the reason I say let me caveat is I use it every day. I use it for marketing, I use it for business, I use it for personal use. But what I feel, and I'm not classifying all youth, but since you asked the younger generation, we look at your social media before I hire you. We do that because you're coming in and I'm going to hire you and you're going to represent my company. And you're going to represent my brand that I've worked my arse off for 15 years to make one of the best brands in this industry. And my clients, who are the biggest clients and biggest banks and biggest healthcare networks in the world, pay me a ridiculous amount of money to keep them secure. And if every weekend you're on Facebook smoking a joint, getting drunk, and with some brand new girl who's half naked, you're not working for me. I don't care if that's your personal choice, but you're not working for me. Because I am going to send you out to clients. I'll give you a great example. And I'm going to start this off by just saying for everyone here, when you deal with social engineering, you have to realize it is not politically correct. Okay, and I'll give you an example. I want you to answer this in your mind. Let's say Lily works for me, and her and I are going to go break into a building together. And we're going to be a pest control outfit. That's our pretext. Who needs to be the boss in our pretext, me or her? Now, I can tell you this from knowing Lily personally and her family. Lily is smarter than me. She's probably more talented than me at everything. Her family is amazing. So she probably deserves to be the boss, but that is not what people will expect. Now, as a social engineer, I'm not trying to change society. I'm trying to break into a building. So when I'm trying to break in the building, I'm not holding my social justice sign. I'm trying to win. And that means I have to play to that bias. So making a younger black female my boss is going to make the security guard think, why is she the boss? And now we have failed. So I need to say to Lily, hey, guess what? You're going to be my subordinate in this pretext. Does that mean I need to treat her bad? No, but it just means that the pretext needs to be solid. And I'm telling you this because the next statement really has to play on that. You can't get hung up over the statements that happen with this. We are in a time in human society where social media seems to dictate almost every action that we take. People have lost the ability to disagree and not be disagreeable. If I see something on Twitter that I don't like, I can't just say I don't like it. I have to hate you for it. And now I have to find all your flaws and cut you down for it. It's disturbing. It's terrible. It's awful. Why the heck do we have to be that way? Right? But I can't change society. What I can do is change myself. Right? So there are some horrific things happening in the world today. Forget the world. In this country, we are in 2021, and just in the last 6 months, we saw racial inequality like we were back in the dark ages. What the heck is happening? We haven't taken advancements anywhere. We thought we were praising ourselves for all the advancement we have in women's rights and people of diversity rights. What? As soon as you have one racist person stand up and say it's okay, look what happened. But here's what I said to the people in my company. If you decide to go public with that, I need you to do it on your personal accounts, because we can't take a side. We have to have a neutrality policy in the company. That doesn't mean that we're not bothered by it. Here's how we make a change. We hire more women. We hire more people of diversity. That's how we make the change. Because me standing up on the internet and saying, hey, this is all bad, not going to do a dang thing. Another white guy jumping on the bandwagon. That's what everyone's going to think. But you know how I can make the change? Make 72% of my company women, and make some of them Latino, make some of them Black, make some of them Asian. And now I'm taking an example. I'm setting an example for other companies. I don't need to now stand up and say, look how awesome I am. I'm making that choice. At the same time, we had a young woman work for us. She was very artistic and creative. She took many, many nude photos of herself. They were not leaked. She put them on the internet. And we had to make a choice with her. We talked to her. We said, look, here, you know, I won't say her name. We said, you can do whatever you want in your private time. My worry is that we are in a male-dominated industry that treats women pretty poorly. And if I send you out to a client and somebody goes and starts researching you and they find this website full of nude photos, I'm worried that you will be objectified. Now, I'm not telling you to take them down. I'm telling you my concerns. You make a decision on how you want to handle it. And she didn't take them down at first, but then something happened and she decided, yep, I'm going to take them down. She doesn't want to deal with that. Now, I didn't ask her to do that, but I'm saying that part of being in this industry, because John, I'm trying to answer your question, and I know this is really long-winded, but the younger generation can develop a thicker skin. They can develop a thicker skin and not be so snowflakey that everything offends you and turns you off. Because if you want to be in this industry, you're going to deal with some real buttholes. You really are. And my suggestion is if you work at a company that's filled with people who treat you poorly because of your gender, your sexuality, or your religion or your race, get out of there. Go somewhere else. Find another place to work that will treat you better. But you're not going to change the industry by complaining about it on Twitter, by posting another Instagram post. You're not going to change it. People will change when they want to change. We can't change other people, and that's a sad fact of human behavior. Any of us who have ever made significant changes in our life know that, right? You could have your best friends tell you, man, you're really gaining some weight, or you need to really stop drinking so much. And when does that change occur? When you want it to happen. Now, I know that's this is a charged group of statements, and I'm sorry for going that direction, but John, I really feel like people ask me this question all the time. Young folks ask me this question all the time. What can I do to get ready if I want to be in this field? And I feel like that is one of the big things that can happen for the younger generation. I need you all to come and take my job because someday I want to retire, right? And right now, what I have is I don't have anybody in your generation stepping up to take my job away from me, and we need it. This is not going away. I'll tell you, one of the great things about this industry, the economy goes into the toilet. Guess what happens to our industry? We go up. The economy goes up. Guess what happens to our industry? We go up. During COVID, when everybody was dealing with unemployment, I hired 5 people. That's insane, right? And this industry always needs people because there's more work than we can handle. So I hope that wasn't too stupid or bad or political or anything or offensive. If it was, I truly am sorry. I'd be happy to debate it and talk about it because I'm not saying I'm always right. I'm just saying that's my feelings and that's what you asked for.
That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What are your thoughts on the U.S. being targeted by large-scale SE attack by adversaries like China, Iran, Russia? I feel this is happening on a social and political level, but we have not figured out a way to mitigate against these attacks. So first of all, yes, that's 100% true. Do you have any ideas on how to protect our country better against these attacks that use our own values against us? Andreas, sadly, no, because here's the issue. Even with good education, and I used myself as an example, I still fell for a phishing attack. So think about there was an attack from Iran on American military, and they used LinkedIn. What they did is they went through and they created a whole bunch of LinkedIn profiles for some very attractive female reporters. And then they went and they connected with a bunch of 4-star generals that were near retirement age. And they asked if they can interview them about their career in the military. And they did it all through LinkedIn. And the questions, of course, talked about their career, what projects they worked on. And soon enough, you're staring at this picture of a really attractive female reporter, and these guys want to brag about their careers and all the things they did. And bam, they started telling information that should not have been released to the public. How do we fix that? Ooh, boy. you know, I've heard people say social media should be held more accountable to make sure that the people that are signing up are the people that they are the people who they are. So I had this conversation with a group once that suggested that dating apps should require government ID to sign up. Can you imagine that? Okay, so you're going to go on Tinder or a dating app. Well, let's hope, you know, you're not going to be on Tinder. That's garbage. But let's say you're on a dating app, and you have to put your driver's license in, a picture of it, and now the dating app gets hacked. Jeez. Now whoever hacked it has not only your intimate pictures, which a lot of people post to dating apps, they have your sexual preferences, and now they have your address, your government ID number, and a bunch of other sensitive information on you. That sounds horrific. So saying to social media companies, you need to do a better job at verifying how many, they're never going to comply. How many people would Facebook have if you have to send a driver's license in every time you signed up for an account? They'd be dead in the water. Oof, solar winds. That's a whole nother topic. So Andreas, I don't know if I have a great answer, because what it takes is consistent education. There's not really a technological solution to the problem. It's kind of depressing, isn't it? So, yeah, it is depressing. You know, the way I look at it, I'll say this is, like, let's say as a parent and as a company owner, I look at my job as my job is to help my children realize how to be a productive and useful member of society, and that includes digital society. So will I succeed in that? I don't know, but I try to teach my daughter, you know, don't post intimate pictures on the internet somewhere, because somebody will use them against you. You know, like, you have a close group of friends, so talk to those people about your things that upset you and the things that are angry about you. Don't post that on Twitter publicly, because that's how predators will find you. Right? Don't post things that personal about your feelings and your intimate thoughts, because that's how attackers will get into your mind and make you do something you shouldn't. So if we do this for our families, our neighbors, our extended communities, then maybe we can make that change that we're looking for. But sadly, there's not a blinky box that I can plug into a network and all of a sudden social engineering is fixed. If that were to happen, I would be a bajillionaire, and I would be doing this from my private island somewhere. So if I figure that out, I'll let you know.
I've got a question for you, Chris, real quick. What is the best way for someone to, I suppose, for someone who has a team of people, to get those people ironclad, mentally steeled, and have really good defense, and just have a really good understanding of when and what is a social engineering attack and how to spot it?
Yeah. So I'd like to use an analogy. Let's say you wanted to learn how to box. So if you entered a local boxing gym and you said to the trainer, hey, coach, I want to learn how to box. And that guy put you down in front of a computer and he showed you a 40-minute CBT on boxing, and then he put you in the ring with Mike Tyson. You'd be like, I'm out. This guy's a moron, right? That's not what you would expect, but that's what we do every day with our teams. We show them a 40-minute video on phishing once a year and go, you're ready. Here's what you would expect from your boxing coach. He would take you back to the heavy bag and show you how to punch it. He'd put protective gear on you. He'd show you how to stand and hold your hands. He'd show you how to throw a punch, how to take a punch. Eventually, there'd be a sparring partner in the ring with you. Sparring partner doesn't want to kill you. He wants to teach you how to throw and protect and duck and take a hit. Eventually, you're in the ring for a fight. And that person isn't out of your class. He's not heavyweight. He's there equal with you in skill and size, so you can learn how to really box. Take that analogy and apply that to social engineering. You need to phish your people, vish your people. They need to be adversarial simulated, so they know what a real attack feels like, before it happens from a real attack. If the first time you ever get punched in the face is in a street fight, you're in for a big surprise. So get punched in the face in a ring where someone doesn't want to kill you, because then you know what it feels like. You know what happens. You know your eyes water. You know that you may have to shake it off. You know you drop your hands when you get hit in the face. All those things then become relevant to you, and you go, wow, okay, I understand why people get knocked out so fast. But if the first time that happens is in a street fight, you're probably going to end up dead or in a hospital. So I tell people, don't wait for your people to get hacked by China, Iran, Russia. Don't wait them to get hacked by a malicious group. Test them with the goal of not saying, look how dumb you are, but test them with the goal of saying, here's how I'm going to educate you. Here's how I'm going to help you. Set up proper reporting mechanisms. Set up proper methods for them to catch and report those type of attacks, and then reward them when they do it. And you'll see a huge difference in your people when it comes to those kinds of attacks.
Got you. So hands-on experience and practice makes perfect.
Yeah. Yes, 100%.
Awesome. Well, I mean, of course, everyone's still free to send whatever questions they have in the chat, or, unmute themselves and share. I'm going to pivot a little bit. Like prior to COVID, I would live vicariously through you all the time when it comes to DEF CON and those kinds of things. So I just want to hear a little bit more about your experience, some of your stories from when you were at DEF CON, like physically, because it's always been so cool to me, and I don't know when I'll have a chance to actually attend, so I'm just going to hear it from you.
DEF CON is an interesting place. It is the most dangerous network in the planet Earth. It is not just good people from security industry that are there. Hacktivist groups come from around the globe, and everything gets hacked. I've literally stood next to an ATM machine in a hotel that spat money out. TVs get hacked. I ended up with a $12,000 porn bill on one of my rooms once, and I don't even watch pornography. It's not something I do. Things happen. You don't plug your phone in, you don't leave Bluetooth on, and you certainly don't connect to any network that you don't own at DEF CON. But it is also one of the places where you can learn some of the most advanced and current attacks that are happening in the market today. And that's an amazing reason for people to visit it. We go out there and we run the social engineering village. So we've been doing that now for 11 years. It would have been 12 last year and 13 this year, but I don't think they'll be live again this year. So, but for 11 years live, I've been running the Social Engineering Village, which is basically a giant room where we just talk about social engineering. We have a few competitions like the Social Engineering CTF, SECTF for kids, SECTF for teens. We have a fake office that we set up, and we call it Mission SE Impossible, and you have to break into our office and get out of handcuffs and do all this cool stuff. We have lie detector tests. We have all sorts of different OSINT challenges and different things happening throughout the week. 4 days for us out there. It is just a ton of fun, tiring as heck, but if you're in InfoSec, you want to visit DEF CON at least once. At least once. It's not for everybody. It's definitely, it could be a little bit nerve-wracking and scary. Last time it was live, there was 31,000 people there. So, yeah, I think you have to be cautious, but it's a lot of fun.
Wait, sort of like tacking on to that question, like what level of expertise do we need to be in order just to participate in that sort of event?
None. There are people who are brand new noobs that aren't in the industry at all that come out, and there's people that have been doing that forever. It's a conference. So like, let's say Lockpick Village, you go out and you go in there and you learn how to pick locks. You can go into the Drone Village and they're teaching how to hack drones, and there's a voting village and they teach you how to hack voting machines, and there's just different areas there. Ours is SE, and it is just made to help people learn different areas of security. So you can be completely new in the industry and go out there and still have a good time.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
And once again, I don't want to cut you off too soon or anything like that, but are there any further questions that anyone would like to share, unmute their mic, or send in the chat?
I was just wondering, what's the craziest, I guess, what's the craziest story you have about a social engineering,
Hmm.
I guess, scenario?
Let me think. Literally, let me think.
Like, how far was someone willing to go to like give out information?
No, I'm gonna tell you a story. I'm just thinking which one. There's a good one. Okay. So we got paid. We got paid to break into 3 banks in Jamaica, and I've never been I've never been on a break-in job in Jamaica, so it was our first time going there for that. And when we arrived on the location first to scope it out, this first bank, the whole parking lot was surrounded by a fence with barbed wire, and their security were guys on dirt bikes riding around the parking lot with sawed-off shotguns on the side of their dirt bikes. And I thought, well, that's new. That's not what I was looking for. Like that's going to be an interesting, event. And I was with my buddy Ryan. He works for me, and our pretext was that we were auditors because we knew this already coming in, that we were going to stand out, right? In the area that we were in, it was predominantly black, and we were going to be like the only 2 white guys in this area. So we're like, we need a pretext that definitely brings us in from America. That would make sense. And what can that pretext be? So we were auditors. We were PCI auditors for this bank. That is what we decided to become. We found the company they use for PCI auditing online, so we had shirts made up and everything. And we just thought we got one chance to not get caught because getting caught can mean getting shot, and we're not going to run with people with dirt bikes and shotguns. So we had hired this young man from the street. We just said, hey, we'll give you like $20 if you go into that front office and you just start asking the security guard how you get a job at the location. And he's like, okay. So we gave him $20, and he goes in, he starts talking to the security guard. And then I grab my cell phone and I say, Ryan, just follow me. And I have a clipboard. And as I walk in the front door, I'm saying, yeah, John, we're coming up now. We're finishing the audit. And I'm acting like I'm speaking on my cell phone. And security sees us, and I'm saying that loud enough that they can hear us, and they just ignore us completely. And we walk right past security. So now we're in the bank, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like that was nerve-wracking enough. And we go up the stairs, and we round the corner, and there's this big door that says ATM Testing Center. So this woman is literally cuts in front of me, and she opens the door with her RFID card. And I just turn and I follow her right in, and Ryan comes in behind me, and she goes, excuse me, what are you doing? And I said, oh, we're doing a PCI audit, so we have to test this room. And she goes, oh, okay. So we were in the ATM testing room for like an hour. I took video of the guy testing ATMs. Ryan was up inside of an ATM taking pictures of parts. After we got done there, we're like, okay, let's leave here. We head down the hallway, and the call center's at the end of the hallway. So I get into the call center, and there's like hundreds of people in this call center sitting at desks. So I just kind of walk all the way down to the last row. And I go down, and there's a woman, a little area where there's only a few people, and there's a woman sitting at this desk, and there's an empty computer next to her. And I walk up to her and I say, excuse me, can you type your password into this computer? And she goes, my password into that computer? And I said, yes, please. And she goes, I don't want to do it when you're watching. And I said, oh, I'll look away. So I turned my video camera on my phone, and I set it on top of my clipboard, and I just pointed my phone above the keyboard, so we recorded her typing in her password. So we got her password on record, but then she said, okay, I'm in, what do you want? I said, oh, you can go back to work. So she left me with the computer open. So we began to hack the whole network in the bank through this open computer. And then Ryan was doing that, and then a guy got up from his desk to go to the bathroom, and he left his badge and everything, his desk unlocked. So we went to that computer, and we started hacking the whole network through that computer, and I stole his badge. And then this woman comes out, this manager, and she goes, hey, what are you guys doing? And I said, oh, we're doing a PCI audit. And she said, who's your internal bank contact? And we didn't have a name. And I said, oh, I can't remember his name. Man, I said, I don't have that. And I said, here's my boss. And she goes, I don't care about your boss. Who's your bank contact? And I said, I don't remember. I have his phone number. And she goes, you come with me. So she brings us back down to security. And she says, these guys were in the bank. Did you let them in? And he says, yeah, we saw them pass. They're doing the audit. The security guy says that. And she goes, well, he doesn't know his bank rep. And I said, let me call him. So I call my contact in Jamaica, who is the guy who hired us to do the job. He doesn't work for the bank. He works for another company down there. And I said, hey, this is the bank representative, right? And he follows along. He's like, yeah, yeah. I said, I couldn't remember your name. I'm sorry. I didn't write it down, but one of the security guards here wants to talk to you. So I hand my phone to the security guard, and he says the name of the guy in the bank. And he says, yep, I'm Mr. Smith, and they're supposed to be there. Please let them go. And the security guard, okay, he's verified. Where do you need to go? And I'm like, to the knock. And they go, oh, okay. And they just bring me into the server room, and they just let us go in the server room. We were there for like quite a while, and then we went out. We left the bank, and we were like, holy crap, like that was unbelievable. We were in there for like a couple hours. We left the bank, and then we went to the second branch. So we go to the second branch. We drove a few miles away. We get to that branch, and the security office for this that we had to break into, where all the servers were stored, was in a separate building away from the bank, and it was brick, and it was surrounded by this giant barbed wire fence. The fence was all RFID locked, and we're like, ah, crap, how are we going to get in there? So there's a bell, and we ring the bell, and the security guard comes out, and we told him our pretext, and he said, no, they didn't verify the person at all on the phone. No, that was great. So we say the pretext, and the guy says, hang on. And he goes inside, and he grabs his clipboard, and he goes, you're not on the list. And we had picked a name now that we had, because on the drive to that one, we called our contact and find us a name. And they found a name of a guy who's higher up in the tech part of the bank, who was in another island on a business meeting. So we used that name. We said, oh, Alfred was supposed to put us on the list. Didn't he put us on the list? And he goes, you're not on the list. He goes, let me call him. So my thinking was, let's get in. And while he's making that phone call, Ryan can hack the computers, and I'll stand watch. So I said, hey, before you go make the call, I'm really sorry to ask, but we're Americans, and this heat out here is unbelievable. We're going to melt. Can we just come in and wait in the lobby while you make the phone call? And he's like, sure, no problem. So he unlocks the gate. We get in, and there's like 3 computers in the lobby connected to the network. And I'm like, Ryan, as soon as he leaves. And he's like, yeah. So he gets the USB stuff ready. And this guy goes around the corner, and he says something which we couldn't hear. And 2 seconds later, this dude that looked like the size of freaking King Kong comes around the corner. This guy was so wide, he did not fit through the doorway standing straight on. He has a flak jacket on. He has 2 knives on his flak jacket. He's got a stick the size of me on this one hip. He's got a shotgun on the other hip and a handgun on his leg. And he's standing in the doorway like this. And Ryan moves just to look at a computer. He goes, And I'm like, nope, we're going to sit right here. We didn't move a muscle. That guy came back, and he's like, hey, no one knows about this meeting. I can't get a hold of Alfred. And I'm thinking, we're going to die. This guy's going to pick me up, and he's going to break me in half like a twig. So I'm like, okay, Chris, think. And I'm like, oh, Alfred, he had to fly to a business meeting in another branch. And they're like, yeah, that's what the office said. I'm like, yeah, you may not be able to get him. Maybe he's in the air. I said, why don't we do this? We'll leave, and I'll get a hold of Alfred. I'll have him call you, and then we'll come back later on today. And he's like, okay, if that's cool with you guys. I'm like, that's perfectly cool. I said, we got another place to go. I'll check if we're on the list here. You want me to call them ahead? I said, no. We'll take care of it. I said, we got to get lunch anyway on the way there. And he let us out. We ran to the car, and we're like, dear God, like that guy was literally going to break us. So we succeeded at one place we got stopped. But yeah, that happened. That was probably one of the higher end craziest stories that we ever had, except for the time I got arrested 5 times in 1 week. But that one's a different story.
That was great. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, that happens. That happens more often than I like to say, So.
Okay, awesome. Any other further questions that you all may have for Chris?
If not, it was great meeting you all. Awesome questions. My email is on the screen here. If you think of anything after you would like to ask, feel free. You can thank Lily for setting this up. It's hard to say no to her. Look at that smile. You can't do it. It's impossible. She social engineered me into coming. But it was a lot of fun to meet you. I hope that at least some of you really make a career out of this and come on over to our side. Feel free to reach out to me as you're picking the next things you want to do and ask questions. I may not always have great advice, but I'll be more than happy to try to help and point you in whatever direction I can. And
Yeah.
thanks, Lily, for setting this up.
Of course, and I can speak for everyone who's here, everyone who was here previously. We really enjoyed this. This is all so fascinating. I wish we could stay here all day and talk about it, but we're happy to have you. And of course, this is recorded, everyone, so if you ever want to go back and listen to it, you're more than welcome to. And as he said, I really do hope you all reach out and look more into what he does, especially his human hacking book that was actually released recently.
Yeah, January.
Yeah, exactly. So I have it linked somewhere, but if not, I'll go ahead and send it in the Discord as well. But thank you again, Chris. We really appreciated it, and we'd love to have you again soon.
Thanks. I'll come back.
Great.
We'll see you all later.
Chris.
Bye, everyone.